Welcome to Human or Athlete. I'm so excited. We're on episode 7, and I'm so excited to be bringing with you today Matteo Esposito. Glad to have you on here, bro.
Thank you, bro.
Diving straight in, as usual. Can I give me and the audience, people listening, a short glimpse into your journey up until this point, and where you are, where you are today?
Of course. So obviously, I'm an aspiring footballer. I haven't been fortunate enough to be in and around like a professional environment. So I've just kind of been playing through non-league. Gone to college schemes, played like grassroots football, and I'm now at 21. Would like to say I'm still playing non-league, but obviously everything going on right now, it's a little bit complicated. But yeah, just still aspiring footballer, and yeah, literally just chasing to achieve that dream that I've had from so young.
What's it like not having been at a pro club, and kind of being outside that, and what does that mean for you as a person? And like, what's the kind of dealing with the stigma around? Oh, I've come from here, or I've come from there. What's that like for you? Like approaching that, and how do you see that?
Great question. I think it's definitely a little bit more difficult. Growing up, whenever you're going to these places, whether it's a team or whether it's some sort of trial, and you're hearing about the backgrounds that other people have got. As it like when I was a lot younger, it is a little bit intimidating at times. But to be honest, it's probably being on that journey that's kind of built up the mentality that I feel I have right like at the moment. And just kind of trying to have like 100% ownership yourself. Being in a pro club, I feel like you're very privileged to have kind of not everything done for you, because they still work so hard. But you're turning up to training. The training sessions put on for you. The gym sessions are put on for you. The programs are made. The nutrition. Every aspect is kind of covered. And on top of that, you're training with the best of the best. So it's only a matter of time before you start to bring your levels up towards them, and you're all pushing each other so hard in training. It's inevitable that you're going to improve. And when you kind of haven't got that back in, it is difficult, because you've got to go and do the research yourself. You've got to research sessions, you've got to research what diet works for you, and the gym stuff. And I look back to when I was younger and think now like how far I've come, and thought, what was I doing? Like, what was I doing in the gym that time, or what was I doing? Like, but it's all just a learning process. And yeah, I feel like I wouldn't change my journey for anything, really. I wouldn't change it at all.
Brilliant. You speak of that mentality. What is that mentality you got now?
Just to outwork everyone. And I think from such a young age, that's what it's been about, because I feel like as soon as you're not in a professional club, you're constantly playing catch up from the get-go. Already, obviously, when you're younger, it's a bit different. But as you hit about 16, 17, they're in full-time football. They're training every day. So already you're playing catch up. If you are part of like a semi-pro team, you've got a 3-day week. So constantly you've got to take it on yourself to do the extras. And that only puts you on par with them. And then you've got to outwork them even more. So I feel like, yeah, outworking them, and just knowing that I've kind of come from nothing. Just knowing I haven't had that backing from young. And also you could also almost say like coaches didn't believe in you, because if they did, you'd be there. And that's kind of like the harsh reality. So yeah, just outworking everyone. And I think as I've got older, it's become more about outworking myself as well. And starting to think, what would the best version of myself be doing right now? Or he'd be staying out after training. He'd be doing this. He'd be getting in some recovery. Okay, so why are you not doing that? So there's all these questions that you start to ask yourself, that sometimes I question, if I was in that pro environment from such a young age, would I be asking myself these questions? And I'll never know until I obviously get there. But I'd like to think that because I've been on this journey, that when the day comes, when I eventually, get that pro contract or get what I've been working towards, that I wouldn't slip back into bad habits, that I'd maintain the good habits that I've had to gain over this time, and that I would just rock it upwards, really.
That's so interesting. 'Cause obviously, we spent a couple of years outside professional clubs in London together, and it was, I remember being, one of a few that, or both of us being of a few that were willing to do that, and we're still in that position where we're still obviously working and doing everything, and it's really interesting as to how much that's taught me, because now obviously I've gone into professional football over the last couple of years myself, and the difference that is compared to you kind of know in a lot of ways a lot more about yourself going in. Like, I came into my first gym session at Salford, like literally obviously on trial and everything, and I'm out lifting everyone. Whatever, I'm not obviously the biggest, I'm not whatever the tallest, the strongest, but I'm out lifting everyone. We had who could do the longest plank, and I was like, I'm not gonna fall. And I went into that week, and I was kind of like, if I hadn't gone through what I'd gone through down in London, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today in this week. And then you look at lockdown, and that was a harsh reality check for so many professional footballers. And there was quite a few that I know who were kind of out of lockdown, and didn't really have the structure or whatever given by the professional clubs, because obviously a lot of the clubs were panicking themselves, let alone looking after us. And then they were in this position where they were just clueless. And we, again, I think the people that have gone through that thing where they've got to take that ownership, like you said, you can go into it with positivity. This is what I do. This is I literally kind of said to myself at the beginning of lockdown, I'm back in where the position that I normally am, that I'm used to, where I
100%. Yeah.
Work my best, where I'm in control. I know what I'm doing and I'm pushing. So it's so easy to relate to that. And I think that, that saying that, what you're saying about relating always to your best self, and that kind of idea of that future self, in 5 years, or in a year, if am I going to be proud of myself that I worked harder every single day? It's all going to add up in a way. So in 5 years, I'm going to be grateful for all the work that I've done in the last 5 years. Every time I did the extras, every time I did more, every time I did, push myself to my limit. And that's kind of that comparison to your best self, your future self, is such a kind of powerful mental tool.
Definitely. I think with the whole lockdown situation as well, for me, it was just a blessing in disguise for so many reasons, but in particular, for me, it just leveled the playing field. Like we spoke about, these pro clubs have a lot done for them, which is brilliant. It's fantastic from them. They've got the financial support, they've got the staff to be able to do that. And when that got taken away from people, and and clubs started to send out programs, this, that, and the other. Look, you need to go and do this yourself now. We can guide you, but the ownership's on you. There's no doubt that people would have struggled to that, because it's well, I've got no one holding me accountable anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If they're telling me get the session done at 10 o'clock because that's what time you'd normally be at training, who's to tell me I can't do it at 1? Why have I got to wake up early? Mm-hmm. So no one's no longer holding themselves accountable. Now, with the journey that we was on, and the journey that I'm still on now, I am my biggest critic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding myself accountable. So when that time come, it was okay, this is my time now.
Yeah.
And it sounds a bit cliche saying it, and sounds a bit cringy, but honestly, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Waking up early morning, running, going training, having to invest in home equipment to keep up on your strength stuff and things like that. And it was honestly unbelievable. And for me, come towards the end of that lockdown was probably physically and mentally the best position I've been in.
Right.
And to think that is crazy, because if you think about the year as a whole and that lockdown, there's so much negativity around it.
Mm-hmm.
People want to forget about 2020. They don't want to remember it. It's oh, what a year don't really want to be remembering that. Let's forget about that. 2021, hopefully it's better. And for me, it's the complete opposite. I saw myself transform, like I said, physically, mentally, spiritually, became a person that I didn't think I could become. And the only reason I feel I became that person was because COVID exposed us and exposed me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was just a massive learning curve. So yeah, just to go back to what you were saying, literally, a blessing in disguise.
That mentality is incredible, because it's you've come into this thing, we've all faced this incredibly, obviously, difficult obstacle. We've got to deal with it in different ways. And you found a way, you've climbed it, you've climbed the mountain. Obviously, there's always going to be more mountains to come, but you've climbed the mountain, you've taken the lessons, you've grown from it, like you said, you transformed. That's an incredible mentality. Reading The Obstacle Is the Way recently, it literally you've made the obstacle the path. Like that is part of the journey. That is part of the way, and you've overcome that brilliantly. And that's just like mad to see because it's like you said, 2020 is a bad year. Like why does it have to be a bad year? And it's like the quote, like everything is good or bad. Nothing is good or bad. Thinking makes it so. So it's all your perspective on what is good or bad. And to see that you're doing that is incredible, and it's obviously so beneficial to you as a player and as a person. And like I want to obviously touch on that quickly with the mentality and the like I said, the work ethic, the keeping fit. It's like you're being a professional outside of professional football, and that is so vital.
Literally. Someone actually said it to me. It was actually my physio. So he said, when you're aspiring to be a professional and you're not in that professional environment, you need to replicate the environment of a professional player.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough, training or playing a match on a Tuesday, training on a Thursday, playing a match on a Saturday. That is not enough. Already to play 2 games in a week is a lot. So there needs to be some sort of recovery, some sort of managing the workload. So, you think about a professional's day, getting in at whatever time it is, doing your prehab, going out to the pitch, maybe staying out for 15, 20 minutes, working on some sort of weakness, your gym sessions, your recovery sessions, your player analysis when they get the team in and you're going through things. Like these are all things that you need to be able to replicate on your own. Because if you just leave one stone unturned, that might be the difference between you getting that contract and you not getting that contract, or you being better than that person that you're playing against. And I think within the non-league scene, I think a lot of people underestimate it because there's a lot of us out there who are still aspiring to be that professional footballer. So even when you get into the non-league, there will be other people that you're playing against that kind of share that similar mindset as you. And for me, they're probably the hardest games or the hardest battles in terms of actually playing against them, because you think the same or think very similar. Both of you will have that winning mentality. You've both worked so hard to get something, and you're not willing to let anyone stand in your way. So it is a breath of fresh air, knowing that there's still people out there and they're the people you want to surround yourself with. But I think, definitely coming back to the question, you've got to replicate that environment if you want to even have a sniff at getting that contract and taking their place.
Would you say you have like an underdog mentality, and that want and that hunger for it brings out more in you in those games, or when you play up against a pro team in a friendly or whatever? And we'll just go on.
100%. I think the underdog mentality, it is what it says on a tin. You're the underdog. A lot of people sleep on people like myself because it's like, you haven't got the status that I have. You're not in my position. I'm at a pro club, you're not. So on paper, I'm the better player. And for me, I love that. I love it when people, treat me like an underdog and underestimate me, because it gives me an opportunity to prove them wrong. And for me, like you said, just having that mentality has just brought almost like a dark side to me. That just will do anything to win, will do anything to get that edge. For me, preparation is so key. Knowing that I'm coming up against someone and just knowing like, you haven't trained as hard as I've trained. I haven't been eating no junk or anything like that. I've been keeping on top of my nutrition, my recovery, my mentality with what I'm actually feeding my brain, like all these things. When it comes to match day, whether that's an actual competitive match in a league, or whether that's, playing with some friends who are professionals, or playing against some people in a showcase game, I know that they're not doing that. So again, that just gives me that edge. And it's more than anything, it's a test, isn't it? A coach told me a very, very important piece of information. I remember when we used to train and when he used to let us pick our teams, all the best players, we'd grab each other and say, oh, come on, like, let's all go Reds, let's go Reds. Because we wanted to win. And we knew with the best players surrounded on our team, we would win. And he noticed it straight away and said, he brought it back to the Man United era when they had like Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, Roy Keane, Beckham, and was like, do you think they all went on the same team? And we said, well, obviously, of course not. And he said, well, why do you think that? And we said, well, to be the best, you got to play against the best.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point playing against, no disrespect, like an under 23s player as Paul Scholes. He's going to play him around the park. Like,
Yeah.
I want to come up against you, Roy Keane, because you're one of the strongest players in the team. It's going to make me better.
Mm-hmm.
I might lose in the small-sided games, or you might get the better of me this session. But from a development point of view, it's going to be great for me. And when he said that, that's just stuck out with me. So, whenever we do, play against teams, or I'm playing with, just during the summer, like five-a-side, or even if it's like a showcase, I always want to go up against the better player, because for me, it's a challenge,
mm-hmm.
and it's only gonna better me. There's a saying people say, be like the dumbest in the room, because by that you're kind of surrounded by smart people, and you're only going to learn. And I feel like it's a bit of a similar concept of
Mm-hmm.
not being the worst player, but surround yourself with the best. Because
Mm-hmm.
although you might not be at their level, from an outside point of view, you're developing so much faster than you would be being the biggest fish in a small pond.
100%. And that's what is so obvious about then keeping your ego in check, because your ego is then not defined by, oh, I've lost this game, I'm a loser, or you're not in that insecure place to go, I have to win every single thing, because you're seeing the bigger picture that is about like the infinite game, or it's about, this is where I'm going in life, not where I am right now. And I think one of the quote is like, literally, act like as the person that you would be in 10 years or 5 years, or do the things that you would do in 10 to 5 years instead of the things that you could do now. And that's so important. And I think a lot of people need to hear that and then take the strength to actually go and act on it. You've said obviously you've grown, transformed, and this journey's brought so much. What have you specifically kind of learned, and what do you value even more because of what you've gone through?
Is this in terms of football, or is this in life as a whole?
I'd say being outside of professional football, but as a person, as a footballer, what has that taught you?
I think, as I mentioned before, preparation is key.
Mm-hmm.
Don't leave anything down to chance. Make sure you cover every single thing, knowing that when you come to that match day, or even when you come to the end of your career, or come to a certain point where there's a new chapter where you can say, do you know what? I left nothing down to chance. I took 100% ownership on everything that I'd done. I trained to the best of my ability, to the best I can every single day. I recovered to the best of my ability. I trained my body, my mind to the best of my ability. And again, just links back to that concept of leaving no stone unturned. I think another thing I've learned, I used to feel sorry for myself. What if, I come from a footballing family where my dad was an ex-pro, or my dad actually knew about football, or my brother was a professional. Some people have these privileges. Would my life be different? What if I was an academy from 9? Would my life be different? But I've just learned to deal with the cards that I'm dealt. In life, I feel like you get dealt the cards that you're given, and every moment you spend kind of moaning about it, or being down, or being depressed, or being anxious about it, is a moment wasted. Sometimes you have to kind of evaluate it and say, like, maybe it would have been different, or I do feel a little bit depressed now. But the longer you dwell on that, the more it's just going to eat you up. The reality is, I haven't, been in a pro club from young. The reality is, I don't come from a family who are like obsessed with football like I am. And there's nothing, I can't change that. All I can change is me now, and how I, and like my mindset towards things, and what my output is in life and in football. And that's what I have control of. People speak about this whole concept of like control of controllables, but I feel people kind of say it as a cliche. People say it, but don't really know the meaning of that. And I think you have to control the controllables. Anything that is in your control, anything that you have ownership on, and that your actions can actually determine what the outcome is, do it. And for me, they're just some of the most important things to me now, and some things that, yes, I apply them to football, but I feel like I apply them to my personal life as well.
I think what comes out so clearly in that is how growth oriented and, in a way kind of realistic, but also obviously optimistic in terms of your perspective is. And that's something obviously you should be really proud of yourself with. And that is something that really makes a huge difference in how you approach everything, and it can be cultivated, it can be, created in so many ways. And I think that's so huge, and that comes to me as something that's so important, as well as your perseverance, because I feel like that is what is so difficult, to keep persevering, to keep going out. And like, do you find it isolating? Do you find it tough on your own sometimes?
Definitely. I think it does get tough. You know, I do believe in 100% ownership, but sometimes there are days where you don't hold yourself accountable. And, you know, having other teammates there or having other coaches there that can, when you do slip up that one time, kind of hold you to it and keep you in check and say, well, hold on a minute. You know, yes, you're feeling tired. You know, yes, you're feeling leggy from yesterday, but you said at the start of the week that you had a session to do today.
Mm-hmm.
Go and do it. You know, sometimes that does get the better of you and it does get tough. But again, for me, it just keeps adding to the whole concept of just developing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, being in the trenches, as people call it, you know, training on your own on a cold morning when everyone else is sleeping, you know, thinking like people are watching you and just thinking like, look at him, he's all there on his own and he's trying so hard to do it, but he isn't going anywhere. For me, that's just constant fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the journey that I've been on, don't get me wrong, I've improved as a footballer. But for me, you know, my mentality is kind of what's improved the most. And I actually was speaking to a friend not long ago, and he's in a very similar position to me. And we said, when we have this kind of, I like to call it like a non-league mentality of, you know, not being in a professional club, because we've worked so hard to want to get there, that when we get there, there's no way we're going to let it slip.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once we're into that, once we get that contract, you know, the only way is up. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I feel like a lot of footballers, don't get me wrong, there's some who have fantastic mentalities, who are so switched on, who are going to have fantastic careers. But I feel like some people almost take for granted
Mm-hmm.
the position they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And in all fairness, I don't blame them, because, you know, they've been in a pro club from 9 years old, for example. They don't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
And to them, it's like, why is everyone seeing this as such a big thing? Like, to me, I'm just playing football. Like, this is my job. Yes, it's a privilege, but this is all I know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you do see, and I've seen it and I've played against people, you know, people that have been at clubs from such a young age, you know, they drop out of football and they don't know how to react. They have
Mm-hmm.
no clue what to do because they've never been in this position. You know, they've had everything done for them. Um, and yeah, for me, it's almost like a privilege, you know, being on
Mm-hmm.
this journey, because I've just learned so much about myself, and I'm still learning now. And I think that's kind of like the beauty of it.
That's mad, and I can relate to that so much, because I always like used to like literally like affirm it over and over again. I was like, the first trial I get, the hunger and everything, like, like you said, when you get that opportunity, I was like, I'm not letting it slip. Like, there's no reason that I'm not getting it, and like sure enough, it worked out. But on those days where you can't do it on your own, how do you react to that? And like, what do you then like, what do you put in place? Like, do you have any kind of rules where you can take, be kind to yourself, or like, how do you balance all of that?
I think the way I would deal with it now would be a lot different to the way I would have dealt with it maybe 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, me 5 years ago probably would have been very, very hard on myself. You know, you want to be a professional footballer, your legs are aching and you haven't trained today and you're trying to be a professional. You know, someone's out there training while you're kind of sleeping, or while you're, you know, sitting at home doing nothing. And I do believe in that to an extent now as well. You know, I don't think there should ever be a day that goes by where you don't train. Now, that doesn't have to be physical training. It might be that you train your mind. You know, it might be that you read part of a book that means a lot to you, or, you know, you do something in terms of like player analysis, or even like a recovery session at home,
Mm-hmm.
even a stretch, a foam roll, all these little things, just constantly seeking the 1%. You know, if I was to say that, you know, from the start of lockdown, the first lockdown till now, you know, I haven't had a day off, or I haven't had a difficult moment, you know, that took quite a lot for me to get through, I'd be lying. You know, them days do come. And I feel like it's them days you really have to look in the mirror and just say, you know, why has my day ended up like this?
Mm-hmm.
Why have I laid in? why have I not trained today? Is it because you're feeling a bit leggy? Well, why are you feeling leggy? Well, clearly you're overworking. So are you managing your workload? How can you manage it more? You
Mm-hmm.
know, I've been that guy 100% every day, just grafting it out, double sessions a day, triple sessions a day, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, just smashing it out. Having that kind of Kobe mentality, that MJ mentality that people read about, and it's inspiring. But the question is, can you keep it up? For me, I couldn't. 7 days a week to be training that much, it didn't work for me. And there's a reason why footballers have recovery days.
Mm-hmm.
They're the people right at the top and they're doing it. So sometimes you have to question, is this session going to be beneficial? Yes, right now it might be, but then tomorrow I'm going to feel even worse. Sometimes you've got to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it's a journey. I feel like we're so fixated on this destination of signing this professional contract or, winning this trophy or getting to this club or whatever it is, that sometimes we forget that the dream really is the journey and
Mm-hmm.
learning about yourself as a player, making these mistakes. I used to let mistakes kind of define me all the time. That's how I was. And I was actually just thinking about it today. I was thinking about what point do I really want to get across today? And for me, one thing that really sticks with me is, don't let mistakes define you, and they don't. It's how you kind of bounce back from them that actually defines you.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to make mistakes as athletes, but more importantly, as people, as humans. And it's about how we deal with them. Sometimes we have to look in the mirror and not out the window. It's easy to pass the buck. It's easy to put the blame on someone else. And sometimes you just comes back to that point of just holding yourself accountable and really evaluating yourself.
Mad words. I love it. It's inspiring. What is your perspective and kind of opinion? How do you embody the like? I know what stage in the journey you are on, kind of like the more mindset, if I want to call it that, and kind of like to doing more, to being more, to wanting more. Like, where are you at? Or obviously wanting more being at the beginning, but kind of where are you at in that journey of more, and what does that mean to you at the moment?
Yeah, great question. For me, I think growing up as a young kid, I used to always feel as if the training itself was the most important part. And as I've got older, I've started to realize that football is a lot to do with mindset, and not just on the pitch, but more importantly off the pitch. I believe that it's a lifestyle, and it's a lifestyle that you can't pick and choose days that you want it to kind of be valid. I think as I've grown up, the mindset that I have within football, has always been within football. You know, for me, I was like 2 different people. One person on the pitch and another person off it, and I started to realize that it shouldn't be like that. I feel like the person you are should be reflected in every aspect of your life, and that's when it started to hit me. The amount of work, the commitment, the discipline, and sacrifices that I've put into football. Why am I not putting that into all aspects of life? I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. And for me, I had almost like a chip on my shoulder. I had this ego. And I know we spoke about it not long ago, about reading the book, Ego is the Enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I had this ego that anything that I was doing that wasn't benefiting my football career, that wasn't to do with football, was time wasted.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was spending time with family on a Friday evening, for example, round the table, knowing I had the game on a Saturday, that's time wasted. Go and lock yourself away. Go and isolate yourself. Get in the zone, be ready. If I was, spending time seeing friends, for example, that's time wasted. And that's how I was. That's just how it was. And it's probably only the last maybe 6 months to a year that I've started to realize that there's so much more to life than just football.
Mm-hmm.
And although I have this obsession, and I know you're the same with football, and we have this obsession, and it's what we want to do for a living, that yeah, there's just so much more to life. Like, your football career is only so long, and as much as I want to dominate as a footballer, and achieve that dream and smash my goals and win trophies and and be the best player and whatnot. I also just want to be the best version of myself. And yeah, it's just a mentality and a mindset that I've kind of carried over into all aspects of life, whether that's, my relationships with people, my personal growth, my health. Health has been such a big one, especially during this pandemic. I think a lot of people are starting to realize now, the power of health, and how important it is, not just for athletes, but for all humans. You look how many people have maybe taken a real hit, with this whole virus. And sometimes I question, is the reason why I haven't maybe been hit so hard because of, the physical condition and the mental condition that I'm in right now.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me thinks it is. So yeah, I feel like mentality and mindset is such a big part of life now, not just sport.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a brilliant answer, because it touches really obviously importantly on, yes, this whole, being more, doing more mindset is brilliant, because as humans, we are all born and we all have this within us. Like literally everyone, it's like a real human thing is to be more and to grow and to see what limits we can, and kind of in a way be infinite, because there are no limits. And I think when you start that journey, it's about what more, like wanting more. What more can I obtain? What can I get? And it becomes very surface level. And then it becomes about kind of doing more, like we said, obviously, like the beginning of your football journey, which is all about doing more. Not wasting time. How can I do more of this? How can I do more of that? And then what you've really seemed to evolved into is about being more. And the being is living life to as much, like even like living life more in a way, and that doesn't really obviously make sense, but it's like living life away from football, inside, excitingly, intensely, brilliantly, living life on the pitch like this exact same, and fusing them together and just having that whole approach to life is really that being. And then I think the step in the journey that probably doesn't make too much sense, but it's something I'm really working on at the moment, is just being full stop, because you don't always need more to make you happy, because then it's all external. And then it goes back to being, and then suddenly in a place of being, like you kind of surpass all limits and things, because you will always be content and happy inside. And
Definitely.
that journey is such an interesting one, and it's brilliant to see that it's become about being more, and that evolve, like you evolving like that shows so much strength and perseverance, as well as kind of awareness. So
100%.
yeah, 100% got to back that, and that's really something impressive, and you should be kind of impressed, like proud of in yourself, and it's great to see that.
Thank you. I
What
think
is that?
another thing on
Go
that,
on.
sorry, another thing on that as well, you kind of said it, being more and not doing more. We're human beings, not human doings.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone said that to me, I was like, wow, we say that word. How many times have we said that from the minute we was born, human being, but we don't do it. We constantly think about what are we actually doing rather than what are we being and what are we
Mm-hmm.
embodying. And, someone gave me a great piece of advice, no moment will ever be enough. And this just relates back to you saying, you're never going to kind of be content unless you're content in yourself, because
Mm-hmm.
no moment will ever be enough. Whether that's winning the Champions League, of course you remember it and you think, wow, what a moment. But, once you're in the changing rooms, you're celebrating, you're buzzing, the moment's done.
You're
And
already on the
yes,
downhill.
can you reminisce over that moment? Of course you can. You see ex-footballers speak about all the time, best moment of your career, winning the Champions League, what a moment that was, or winning the World Cup. But I feel like life, and again, for me, if you was to ask me this question a year ago, wouldn't be the same answer as I give you now. But life is more about what you give and not what you receive.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the person you grow to be. And for me, like the prime example, and I'm sure we're absolutely nowhere near it at the moment, but when you see footballers have kids, people ask them, what's the best moment of your life? And it's always like, like having my kid, having my first kid, or, it's always like, it's never really about football. And then,
Mm-hmm.
Whoever's presenting has to kind of change the answer. Oh, but what about within football?
Yeah.
And I think that in itself is like living proof that there is more to life.
Mm-hmm.
And again, giving, for example, having a child, for example, you're giving life. And again, it's about what you're giving, not what you're receiving. All the
Mm-hmm.
trophies, all the status, all the fame, all the recognition, it can only take you so far.
Hmm.
And I feel like once you come to terms with that, all of a sudden you're opening up a part of your brain and a part of your mind that you never even knew you had. And for me, I'm not saying I'm there now because I'm not, but being on that journey and starting to realize that is such a beautiful process, and
100%.
one that I'm enjoying so much. And I'm sure you're the same as well.
Yeah, I think um, that human being quote's really powerful. I think I heard Sadhguru say that as well, and that was like, wow, that like we're human beings, but we're not being. I think that's so profound, as well as every moment. It's not enough. Like, it's so true because it's like we have to make moments this incredible thing for us to remember them. But why can't we remember the moments that are insignificant and find the beauty in the moments that where you're not winning the Champions League, where you just sat at home with your family or just doing very simple things like just mundane tasks or whatever? Can you find the beauty in them? Can you make them a moment that is just profound and enjoyable and full of presence? As well as kind of I think with what you just kind of said, it really hits home about it being the whole journey, and it isn't just that one thing of like, oh, I've just got to get to this. That's all it is. I've just got to get to this external goal, because there's kind of two things with that. Is you can't, by fixing the external, you can't fix the internal, and so if you just go after that one thing external, and that makes like you make it your whole life. You look at Tyson Fury, everything he became champion of the world, and then beat Klitschko, and then went into massive kind of problems for the next 2-3 years with drugs, depression, and everything. And so it's really obviously you want to have those goals and those dreams, and they're vital, but at the same time that not making that your life. And kind of the three things I'm living by at the moment in terms of like giving and not receiving is I'm always going to work as hard as I can. I'm always going to be as honest as I can, and I'm always going to do as much to help others. And that's like my three things that are like, that's all that's important to me right now. Everything else will come on top of that. Like that will,
Wow.
build up on top of that. And with the goals and dreams, because I think it's incredibly important to have dreams. I'm not as big of a fan as New Year's resolutions, because I think, why are you doing them once a year and then, making them so big and grandiose and they're just going to fail after 2-3 weeks? Like, having that steady kind of infinite game approach, always growth centered, I think is so much more important. But what are your dreams like in 5 years? And I want to kind of set this as a challenge to the listeners as well, to think about it themselves. But in 5 years, who do you want to be?
Good question. Wow. Do you know what? It's funny you say that actually. Because I was actually watching a podcast the other day, and it was all about this whole new year, new me kind of
Mm-hmm.
concept that people try to live by. And as much as I'd love to say, um, you know, I want to be true to myself, or I want to be, content in myself. I do feel like you do need to set measurable goals as well. I feel like I'm kind of on the fence with that at the moment. And for that reason, to answer your question, 5 years from now, um, for, for, for me, I'd probably say to be a professional footballer, I think is a given. It's something I've been chasing and something I'm not willing to give up. Um, but more importantly, just to be on the journey, um, to be in the best version of myself. To be someone who has grabbed that kind of fixed mindset within football and has applied it to all aspects of life. Um, it's very easy for me to kind of lay out career-based goals right now. So, I've also started like a coaching company. So it'd be very easy for me to say I want to be here. I want to have X amount of players. I want to make X amount of money in 5 years' time. But for me, my goals don't just sit within my career. They sit within all aspects of life. 5 years from now, I'd love to have deepened my relationship with God. I'd love to have deepened my relationship with my parents and with my family and my friends. I'd love to have given back to people. for people to know the real me and to give back, and people to be able to speak to me and almost take inspiration from me. Um, so yeah, I guess sorry, I've gone a bit off topic. In simple terms, just to kind of be on a journey to being the best version of myself. Now, obviously,
Hmm.
with that comes an action plan. Well, what does that actually look like? Um, what do you actually need to do to get there? How are you actually going to measure that you have become the best version of yourself?
Hmm.
Can you actually measure it? It's easy for me 5 years down the line to say, actually, yeah, I think I'm the best version of myself now.
Hmm.
Can you actually measure it? And yeah, I feel like it's just a journey, really. And sometimes when people ask them sort of questions, it's a little bit overwhelming
Hmm.
because sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you actually don't know where you want to be 10 years from now. Sometimes people don't even want to answer that question because it's like, what if I'm not what I want to be in 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Out fear.
So yeah, I feel like embracing the journey is so important. But likewise, of course, I've got my goals, I've got my aspirations. I'd love to be a professional footballer within a professional club. I'd love to be, doing well with my side business as well. Um, I'd love to be deeper in faith with God, um, and just have a better relationship with people around me.
Hmm. Touch on your relationship with God and your spirituality, because I know that's become a big thing for you in the last kind of since lockdown as well.
Yeah. Um, so from obviously, just to give you a quick overview, so from a young age, I've kind of been brought up in a religious family, or what I thought was a religious family, in a sense of was baptized, had my communion, had my confirmation. I'm Christian, if anyone didn't know. Went to a religious school and whatnot. And for me, that was as far as it went. Um, and it was only during lockdown I actually done my MCL. So for people, I'm sure people will know, but for people that don't know, that's quite a serious injury within football. And I was out for about 12 weeks, which was such a hard place for me to be in, and a place that I didn't feel I could get through based off human strength alone.
Hmm.
And it was then where I seeked God, and I was almost blaming him. Why have you done this to me? I was doing so well. I had such a great lockdown. I signed for a team in step three, which I was really enjoying. And 4 games in, I've now been injured. Why have you punished me like this? Um, and yeah, I reached out to a friend who I knew was very in touch with his faith. He's actually part of an initiative called Ballers and God. If anyone's heard of it, I know we've obviously spoke about it before. And from that moment on, it's changed my life really. It's made me realize what my purpose in life is. That there are things bigger than football. That football is not the be all end all, and that all these kind of materialistic things that we chase right now, having like the nice house, the nice car, even things that people wouldn't consider materials, like having that career, having that status, getting that recognition. It's all going to come to an end eventually. And
Hmm.
when it does, like, what do people know you for? And for me, just growing closer to God, giving him my life, um, serving him and making that my purpose in life, to know Jesus and to serve God, has just really taken off. And I almost feel as if he was to do and to have this conversation at the start of lockdown or even towards the middle of lockdown, I don't feel we'd be having the same conversation right now. I do feel that my whole mindset and my perspective, most importantly, has stemmed from getting in touch with my religious side.
Hmm. Touching on kind of like your MCL injury and the adversity you faced there, and then kind of like looking at your fears and your weaknesses and how you approach them and your awareness around them, because I think that's really important. And I think that's again really important in kind of speaking about them just as much as we speak about how this is where we want to go, this is who we want to be, and also like how do you deal with them, and then like you just obviously mentioned God and your relationship with that and how that's given you strength, like a non-human strength to get through that. How has that helped you as well in terms of dealing with these?
Yeah, I think getting injured, and when it's quite a long injury as well, it gives you time to to really reflect on yourself, on your career, but also yourself as a person. And for me, things that I used to fear, I no longer fear. Things like, a fear of kind of underachieving, a fear of doing all this work and it kind of, and having nothing to show for it. With me, I'm so grateful that I've got a lot of people around me who are very talented. A lot of my friends play football at a high level, and having them as support is amazing. And when they're giving you that support, there's almost that fear of letting them down, because they're established. They've been there, they've played with the best, and when they're giving you that support, it's almost like I've got to live up to that now. And these are all things that I used to fear. And based on reflection of being injured, of, like you said, finding God again, getting in touch with my faith, it just made me realize that I'm not playing for any of them. I'm not playing for myself. Another big fear of mine was like letting down my family. I'm not playing for my family. I'm not playing for my peers. I'm playing in the grace of God. He's the one that's looking down on me, and he will never judge us for our mistakes. The fact that he forgives us for our sins all the time just tells me if I make a mistake on the pitch, he's never judging me. And someone actually we had a call yesterday, and someone actually used a great analogy of, I don't think we'd be able to relate at this moment in time, but as a father, and I'm sure your dad and my dad and every dad out there would vouch for this. When your son or your daughter, that is, makes a mistake, you don't shout at them and say, "Why have you done this?" You forgive them, and you want them to learn from that, and you'll try and teach them and guide them. The same way that I believe we're children of God, and when we make mistakes, he doesn't shout at us either. He wants us to learn from them, and he wants us to embrace our mistakes. And obviously, we touched on it before, towards the start of this podcast, that mistakes don't defy us. And I feel like that's something that I always kind of thought, but now I've embodied it. Knowing why am I actually playing? Who's actually given me these talents? Who's actually put me in this position? And for that reason, I almost feel as if that injury was just a blessing in disguise, because I hit rock bottom in my life. Obviously, I felt like I hit rock bottom. The one thing I cared about most stripped away from me for 12 weeks. Couldn't do it. I'm sure there's people out there that can vouch. Rehab is such a draining and depressing, or can be such a draining and depressing period, because it's very repetitive. You're seeing people, your friends, people, your teammates, whoever it is, playing week in, week out, and you're there and you can't physically do that, even though mentally you feel like you can. Mentally, you feel like you can go out and run because that's what you're used to. Physically, you go out and run, you're like, oh, I feel that.
Yeah.
Didn't feel too great. So, yeah, all these things kind of build up this bubble. And again, just linking back to your kind of comment on perspective, it is kind of what you make it, and the way that you think and the way that you kind of approach a period like that, excuse me, is based on your perspective. And for me, my whole rehab and my whole injury shocked me, because I've come out the other end, not only physically stronger, which I think a lot of people will do, but mentally and spiritually stronger. And I'm at a point now where if I was to get injured again, touch wood, I wouldn't blame God. I wouldn't be disheartened. Of course, I'd be upset, but I'd almost feel as if you're testing me here. You've done this for a reason. I'm a big believer everything happens for a reason. And I feel as if, God is testing me. He's done this for a reason. Maybe he wants me to grow even closer to him. And that's why he's taken my attention away from football, so I give it to him. And for me, that's just such a great reality. It's an amazing reality. And the fact that I've kind of come to it has just given me so much peace of mind.
It's an amazing perspective, I think. And yeah, I respect and admire that so much. What do you fear now? Because you obviously, you used to fear them, but what do you fear now?
Of course. For me, I don't think there's any within football anymore. I feel like it's more within life. Almost letting down God. making mistakes over and over again. We talk about a thing called cheap grace, and what that is deliberately making mistakes, knowing you're going to be forgiven. I'd probably say my biggest fear right now would be God not knowing me, if I'm completely honest with you. That would be my biggest fear. Get into, judgment day or whatever it is, and having to give an account of my life, and him saying to me, like, I don't know you. That would be my biggest fear. And it's for that reason that everything I do is for him. And now I know a lot of people will think, how does that kind of relate to your sport? The way in which I do things for him, can be applied to whatever walk of life you kind of live in.
Yeah.
For me and for you, it's football. So for me, performing to the best I can be on the pitch, being, out training everyone, training as hard as I can be, taking 100% responsibility, doing all of that is for him. So for me, that would probably be my biggest fear. And yeah, it's quite one that's very close to my heart as well.
That's powerful, and I think for everyone listening, religious or not, it's great to see your honesty with that, and that's putting that out there, because I think that's so important within this podcast, as well as people just going, can I create that, even if it's obviously, because we're going to have people that are going to be in the same journey as you, and that's incredible, and they're incredibly wise words for those, and for those who aren't following the same spiritual path, that you can create that in so many other ways, because you're creating that perspective brilliantly, or you're not creating it, you're seeing that perspective brilliantly, and that's not only improving your life so much, but it's creating so much power and strength through obviously bringing in and harnessing what God has given you. But for those outside of that, it's incredible to create that in different ways. So can you cultivate that yourself? If that's the journey you've gone down, you can cultivate that yourself to find that in, can I do it like we said before, the future self, or can I do it for my family or whatever, is to find those reasons, that why, that you have so strongly, and to find that in so many other different virtues and areas in life, because it's clearly guiding you in a really powerful way. And for those that aren't in the same religious kind of journey, there are other ways to find that, and that's powerful in itself.
I think just on that note of, I feel like a lot of people who maybe are very religious and in touch with their faith might be able to relate. And for those who aren't, I guess a way for me to put it across would be this. For me, within life, I kind of narrow my life down to the 3 Fs. Faith. Now, for me, that's faith in God. For someone who's not religious, it might be faith in themselves. It might be faith in their family, faith in their talent, in their ability. For me, it then comes down to family, which is who are you actually doing it for, or who is supporting you on this journey.
And being grateful of that.
And being grateful of that. And that doesn't have to be blood family. It might be friends that you now consider family. And for me, the third one would be football. What is your walk of life that you're trying to achieve this faith in yourself, or this love for your family, or that you're trying to achieve your goals through? For me, it's football. For other people, it might be something else. So again, you can kind of apply it to yourself. And all these 3 Fs, like I like to call them, all lead to one thing, which is the final 4th F: finding yourself. We're all on this journey to find ourselves, really, and to be the best possible version of ourselves. I'm sure everyone can vouch that the person they were last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, is not the same person that you look in the mirror now. I can definitely vouch for myself on that one. And again, just leads back to that journey. You cannot always be fixed on a destination. Must embrace the journey. For me, like a powerful sporting icon is Kobe Bryant. Obviously, unfortunately, he passed away not long ago. But one thing that stuck out for me, and it was actually in his final kind of speech before he retired. He said, all the MVPs, all the trophies, all the praise, everything that he ever achieved, didn't compare to the 5 a.m.s. The times when you're for him on the court on your own. For
Mm-hmm.
us, it's on the pitch on your own.
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting up at early hours, people are sleeping, you're on your own. Just that picture of you in that field. Imagine someone just looking in. You're in that field. It's raining.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely dripping. That is the dream.
Mm-hmm.
That journey is the dream.
Mm-hmm.
Not the destination. And for me, that's just something that stuck out of me. And like I said, in sport, but more importantly in life, we just need to enjoy this journey. And will there be hard times? Of course there will. But again, you need to enjoy them just as much as you enjoy the good ones, because they make you appreciate the good moments. And I feel like the quicker you can, not that it's a race, but the quicker you can come to terms with that, the more open and growth orientated your mindset will be.
I love that. That's beautifully put, and that kind of perfectly leads to the last question. And what makes you more than an athlete, a footballer? What makes you human?
I think, great question, by the way. Making mistakes,
Hmm.
making mistakes. I feel like footballers are judged based on their mistakes and their performances. They have a bad game, all of a sudden, people are hammering them on social media, maybe even like abuse, and it gets to that stage. And I think people forget that they are still human. We are still human, and we are more than just a player. We are more than just athletes. We are more than just footballers. We are still on this journey to find ourselves, to better ourselves. And I think some people get caught up in in seeing how much kind of press they get, how much money they make, the status that they bring, and they feel as if that defies them now because that's what they're known for. And I think it's almost like a hard reality,
Mm-hmm.
because it will be like that, and I feel like it will stay like that for the near future. But I feel like if you can know in yourself that you're more than that, and that you want to just be the best version of yourself that you can be in all aspects of life, and that same kind of drive and mindset that you've applied to whatever walk of life it is. For us, it's sport. If you can apply that into knowing yourself and just dominating your life, then I feel like come the end of your career or whatever it is, you have some sort of peace of mind. And for me, that's just so important, knowing that you can kind of sit back, look at your life and say, wow, like, look how far I've come. Look at where I started and look where I am now, as a player, but more importantly, as a person, as a human being, is probably for me like a life goal. And I'm sure a lot of people can admit that as well and agree with that.
Wow. I think your connection to the bigger picture, and in a way, like, the end, like, towards the end of life is so powerful, and again, another brilliant perspective. So I absolutely love that. And yeah, I'm so grateful for having you on, man. You've spoken brilliantly, and we've highlighted some brilliant topics for listeners. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for listening, guys.